Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video, and today I'll be doing the build video for the GB-X210 kit. And if you haven't seen my first video where I overview of all the parts and my opinions on them, I'll leave a link down below to that very first introductory video. But this is going to be the part 1 build video. You can see I've got all the components laid out here and we're going to get started. So let's get into it, starting with the frame and the motors. I'll try and keep this as educational and short as possible. Alright, here we have the frame. You can see here the GEPRC, I think it was the TX5. Now this really simplifies things because it is a solid base plate, so there's no frame design or frame assembly we have to do. So if you look up here, this is the front with the GEPRC logo, and these little slots here are in the back. So this is the front up here. So you're going to take your motors, and we're going to want a counterclockwise motor here, and we're going to screw that into the front arm here. And now I'm going to use only 2 screws. You can use 4 if you want, but I use Loctite, so I've never had any problems with that. And you want to use the long screws that are included with the motors. These are the longer ones. There is also shorter ones, and that's because for different frames, a 3mm or 4mm base plate, you don't want the screws obviously to go through and touch the coils in the motor because it'll smoke or break and it'll be bad. Don't do it. So if you have a 3mm arm base plate, you want to use the shorter screws, and if you have a 4mm, use the longer screws to get up into the motor here. So we're just going to put this on here. It's pretty straightforward. You just line the motor up with the hole, and then you're going to put one of the screws in here. Get a I believe it's a 2.5mm Allen key to fit the screws. First one's always the hardest. Alright, there we go. And then once you get the first one in, I'm going to just do another, like I said, I'm only doing 2 screws, so I'm just going to do them diagonally. So let's put this other one in here, and no Loctite at first, so keep them loose, so just make sure you have it lined up. Then I like to tighten down one of them just so the motor can't move, and then I back out the other one, and then hit it up with some Loctite here. This is just some Hobby King Loctite, the blue stuff you want to use. The medium strength, don't use the red or else you'll never get these out, but this will easily hold the screws in. So just put some Loctite on that, and then just screw this back in, keeping it fairly tight, but don't tighten all the way yet. Now pull out the other one here, and then do the same with the Loctite. Alright, screwing that one in with the Loctite. Just check once again to make sure the motor is lined up. You can check that by the bearing, seeing if it's in the holes. Everything is in the middle and it spins well. These are nice large holes in the arms, so there's no problems with the C-clip hitting. So then we're going to take the other end and just tighten these down all the way. And you are threading into aluminum motors, and you have Loctite on there, so don't go too crazy. Just give them a good tight in there. You don't want to break or strip anything, that'd be bad. So there we go with the first motor. It's nice, it's on there real well, it's not going to come off, and you can use all 4 screws if you want. There's plenty of screws provided. I just prefer to do 2 to save time and weight. So go ahead and do the other 4, and then we'll get back to the ESCs. Okay, I'm just going to add this little segment in here to interrupt because actually I just noticed something that could have been very bad. I actually thought this was a 4mm base plate. It looks like it, feels like it, and it says it is on the website, but if you look at the screws, they go awfully far past here, and I checked it next to some other 4mm carbon that I know is 4mm, and this is either 3.5mm or 3mm thick. So do not use the long motor screws. Make sure you use the short ones. I'm going to have to take these out and put the short ones back in, so make sure you use the short ones on this frame. Okay, so here we are. All the motors are now on, as you can see, just with the 2 screws, and I put them all in the same pattern there. And just I just put the you notice the battery strap in here because it goes through the frame underneath the power distribution board. So if you put the power distribution board on before the battery strap, it's going to be really complicated to get it in there. So I thought I might as well just stick it on now to get that out of the way, so I don't have to worry about it because I'm sure I'll forget it. So next I'm going to go on and mount the ESCs on the arm here. And really there's a decent bit of room here. You just have to make sure they don't hit where these holes are going to be for that, so they can fit on here. And then pretty much the same in the back, a little bit tighter there. with these holes, but it should fit just fine, and they should run through here. So let's get on to that. Okay, here we are close with the ESC, so lining it up so it just gets past this hole here. It's probably going to need to be about there. It can slide up the arm actually, just a little bit. Probably, yeah, I bet it can fit over here. Just keep these wires a little bit longer, so I'm going to pinch just about right here where they are. And now I'm going to get these cut off. And last but not least, let's just try scissors because my tools are awful and blunt and old. So there we go, that looks good enough. Cut those motor wires off because I'm going to be direct soldering. And this is, looks like I'm starting with the back left motor here. So it's going to need to spin counterclockwise. So we're going to have to reverse 2 of these wires here to get it to do that. So it's going to look a lot like that. So next I'm going to strip down these wires, if I can find my knife. Right, here we are, so let's get these, and this is definitely why some people prefer to get the motors and ESCs together before putting them on the frame. It makes it easier, and you can do that. Probably should have done that for this build since these are rather short wires, but I don't know, I like to keep them on the frame so that way I know exactly where my ESCs have to go. But you know, you can do it either way. So let's just strip the silicone wire back here. Alright, there we go. I got them all stripped, so now I'm going to tin the wires. Okay, so here we are. So let's get the ESC and ESC pads and motor leads tinned up here. So let's just get some solder on there. It's better to use a fairly large tip here. Some nice quality solder there. Now let's get the ESC pads. These are pretty nice. It just flows onto there. No wires that you have to take off. Just nice convenient pads. There we go. And now since this motor is going to need to turn counterclockwise, you can change this in the BL Heli settings in the firmware. You can just reverse the direction, but some of these DOIS, I think they were XM30s, not the XS versions, but people had problems with reversing the motor direction in the software, so I'm just going to be safe and do it manually. So I'm just going to switch any 2 wires around, so I'm just going to switch the middle and the left one. Then let's move this forward and solder all the leads up to the pads here. It's a little hard to do with the camera in the way here. I can't get my hand the way I want it around here. There we go, that looks like some pretty good joints there. So once you have that, pretty much you can just make sure everything lines up, and you can squish these a little bit if you need it, just to make sure the ESCs are out of the way of the holes, and the wires should just all run through in between up here. So it looks good for that one. So do the exact same for the opposite side one. So for the other motor over here, do the same there. And then for these 2 motors, you're just going to wire them up straight across. So for the front right and back left, cross the wires. And for the front left and back right, wire them straight across. That will give you the directions you want, which are counterclockwise for these 2, counterclockwise, and clockwise for these 2 motors here. So do all 4, and then we'll be back. Okay, one more thing that I forgot. Since these ESCs do have the pads bare on both sides, and this is carbon fiber, it's conductive, you cannot just leave this bare here. It'll short on the frame and bad things will happen. So you need to take, these ESCs come with some heat shrink, so I just cut one of the pieces in half, and you just slide everything through it here. It's just the right size for these ESCs, since they come with it obviously, so I just slide that all the way down. I didn't take the original stuff off, and I'm just going to slide that over the end to about halfway to cover, like as you can see that, to cover where the motor wires come out. So, and then I'm going to take my hot air gun and I'm going to shrink this down. right here. It's real simple. If you don't have a hot air gun, you can use hair dryer, maybe a lighter. You can use your soldering iron if you're desperate. Hot air gun definitely makes it a lot easier, cleaner, and more enjoyable, but you know, whatever works for you, whatever you have. And there we go. Simple as that. Looks good, and now everything's protected. So there's our first one, so let's do the other three. Alright, so here we are with all the ESCs mounted and wired in place and heat shrunk down, so as you can see. Another thing you'll notice is they're just wobbling in here, and so to keep that, normally you could just zip tie them down to the arm, which is what I normally do, but I'm going to be a little nicer on these ESCs. You see they're not totally flat across the bottom, there's some components on there, and also helps some vibrations. I'm going to be taking some double-sided sticky foam tape, putting that underneath the ESC, which will help hold it, and then once again zip tying it, not super tight, but tight enough that it'll never come off, and it'll hold it even better down to the tape onto there. So I'm going to do that. There's nothing really need to explain. Just make sure the way you position it that you're not going to be in the way of any of these holes. You might have to pull it back a little bit so you can wire stuff through or around these holes. So just keep that in mind, and I'll get doing that. Alright, there we go. That one's all done. As you can see, just very simple. Just some sticky foam tape underneath, and then the zip tie. I can probably slide it up a little bit more to get equal pressure across the middle here. And that's not going to go anywhere, and it'll keep it out of the way of the props. Even if one of the two does fail, it'll have sort of a backup. So I'm going to go around and do the other four off camera here, and you can do the other three as well, not the other four. Okay, so here we are back again with the ESCs all secured down and in place, and I've got the wires just out of the way so we can open up the middle here, because I'd like to put in the power distribution board next. However, if you take a look at this, besides the main input leads, do you see positive and negative marked anywhere on this board? Nope, there's no positive and negative markings. I'm pretty sure there's squares and circles, and I'm pretty sure the squares are positive, but I do not want to risk it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the XT60 battery lead. I'm going to check it with a multimeter. And I was going to add an extension on the XT60 with some wires about this long in, because if you just mount this straight into the board like that, it's going to be really rigid and it can break and snap the whole thing. But I added these wires, and the solder flowed all the way through, and it made them rock solid anyways, and I melted this stock connector that came with it, if you can see that there. So that really didn't work, so I'm just going to end up mounting it just straight through the board with some of my own XT60s. These are from Hobby King, much better quality than the one that was included, and these also have the cups, because the other ones were the AMAS type and these are the Eternity ones. So I'm going to get that in, and then we'll test the polarities. Okay, it's a little bit better. Make sure you have the negative and negative signs lined up. And let's try and hit this with a bunch of solder and connect the sides and the cup all around. I really don't like this type of connection here, but I got the negative just on there enough to be held. So let's try and get the positive just so it'll hold it, so then I can really go at it. Alright, there we go. That'll hold it enough, I think. So now let's pull that away. And yeah, that'll hold it enough, so now I can really finish up all around it here. So I'm going to have to do that off video because it's just awkward to get in here. So here it is all done. Hopefully you can see I got solder well around all the connector here and heated it up. And I also did plug in a battery to test continuity between the pads, just to check and make sure which pads are positive and negative since they aren't marked. And all these square ones, you can see these ones have rounded corners and these ones are square. All the square ones are the positives, besides these ground and VCC up here. So those are the positives, and the negatives are the circles, so that's what that is. And another way you could also test, if you only heat up the positive here, so say you only solder in the positive connector, all these squares should get hot and not the circles here. So that's another way you could test, but the squares are positive in this case. So next we're going to mount it into the frame, which we're going to need some of the included standoffs to do. So let's get those. Okay, so here we are. This is the nylon hardware that comes with to mount the power distribution board and the flight controller. So let me put this down quick. And these nylon screws here, Phillips head, they go in from the bottom of the frame into these little beveled holes here, which once you put them in there, they lie flat and flush in the frame, which I think is really nice touch there. They don't stick out because they're plastic, so obviously they're more likely to break, as well as it's just a much nicer look. So once you put these through the frame, you're going to screw one of these little nylon nuts down onto it, so that'll give the power distribution board a little bit of spacing off the carbon just in case, so it'll sit about there. And then there should be enough of this screw left once you have that on to screw one of these neck spacers on, which will then go and house your flight controller, which they included more nuts to then tighten down there, so it should make a nice little power stack. So this is going to be kind of up close, so I'm not sure how much I'll be able to show on camera, but I'll try and do my best. Here we go. Just get these nuts finger tight. You don't want to over tighten them because they are just plastic, so you can strip them. Just finger tight. So there's the first one, so now let's do the rest of the three. Alright, so there we go. All four are down finger tight now. So that looks good, and you can hopefully see the little pegs sticking up there. So this is the front up here at the GEPRC logo. So I want this to stick out the left on the bottom here. So I'm going to place this, get all the wires out of the way, hopefully, and it should just sit down right like that over them. So now I'm going to take these next little spacers for the flight controller and just screw two of them on. Hopefully, I don't know if there's going to be enough threads here actually. They might have wanted you to put the power distribution board straight onto the frame. I don't know. Okay, I got a couple threads on there. Not as many as I would have liked, but hopefully once they push down and more on the battery strap, they'll get tighter. And there's not really stress on the power distribution board, so it's not a huge deal. So hopefully pull the wires back, like you can see it on this side. So that's the gap there in between the board and the battery strap runs under there, so that's why you need to put that through first. So I only put two on just to hold it down. So next we're going to work on routing all our power wires for the ESCs. And it looks like just positive ground. Yeah, they should just go up real nicely along the corners just to these pads here, just right around. That should be awesome. Although because of these cutouts, I may have to go around like that. I'll take a look at the rest of the frame and see how it is, and we'll do that. Okay, these two parts here I just took out, they are later on going to be for the camera mount, and they go into the front in these little slots here, this dog bone slot. And I thought this would be obstructing the wires, but if you take a look, there's actually this little cutout here, this little indented part leaves perfect room for the wire to go through, so we don't even have to worry about them. So it really looks like they actually thought about the design when they made this and the parts to go together. So that actually looks pretty good, so we can just remove them and wire up the wires without really worrying about anything here. So let's get on doing that. So basically we're just going to have to, it's going to be real simple. Oops, almost knocked the camera off. All these wires. I'm going to tin all the pads first here, and then I'm going to cut the wires to length. Once again, red positive, which is the squares, and black negative, which will be the circles on the corner pieces here. And and then just cut them and strip them and tin them and then eventually solder them to the board. So let's tin all the power distribution board pads here. Okay, there we go. All the positive and negative pads are soldered up. And you probably didn't notice it there since I sped that part up. But every time I would do one of the pads, I'd hold it on the board for a while with just the tip to heat it up, because this takes a lot of heat. So once again, high heat. I used 390 on my soldering iron once again, as well as a large tip on your soldering iron. You can see I've got this large blunt tip here, and you want to keep it clean. If it can focus. So you want to do that there, because these pads are all parallel to each other. All the positives are together and all the negatives are together. So you're heating one, you're trying to heat up the whole board, so all the heat is getting sucked away throughout the entire board. So that's why it'll take a while, but once you get it heated up, they should all flow nicely. So now we're going to work on cutting our wires to the right length, stripping them, and then soldering them on. Okay, I've got those cut, and now I'm gonna tin them. Hold up. Get that little strand in there, and these are fairly thin wires, so less heat is required. Now, these ones, of course, they're strands out of the way, mixed up, so let's tin that guy, and now let's clean our iron again, and get our tweezers. And let's push these down into the pads here. Once again, hard with the camera. Okay, there we go. I held it on long just to get a real nice joint, because once again, heating up all the pads takes a while, so I want to make sure it's got a real nice. Let me put my iron down while I get this last one here. I gotta bend it a little, because I was planning for the post with the length here, so this is the tricky part. There we go. Got the heat on. Just wiggle a little bit while it heats all the pads up. And there it goes. Oops, it looks like I totally melted this little standoff over here. Whoops. So definitely be careful with your iron. It's hard with the camera. I put it in places I don't want to, but I'll have to get a new standoff here. And I don't like, you might have seen that the standoffs popped off, because there are only like 2 screws really that get in there. So I don't like how long. I wish the screws coming up were longer. And maybe they didn't plan on you to use the washers, like spacers, as I did, but I'm pretty sure they did. But I'm going to probably put some hot glue on these once I am done around the edges to align them or support them, because there's only like 2 threads on that, as you can see. And I melted the tip of this guy here. You can see that. So I'll get a new one. And then cut all the wires accordingly like I did here. And I'll see you once you're done with that. Alright, so there we go. All of the ESC power and ground wires are now cut and neatly soldered onto the board, plus minus, plus minus, plus minus, plus minus. Once again, the square pads being the red wires and the negative being the circle rounded corner pads. So everything's good there. Now we just have the signal wires ready to go up to the flake controller when we add that next. But this is actually going to be the end of part 1 of the GB-X210 build. I know it's probably been like 40 minutes already. I don't even know how long it'll get edited down to, but it's been a while, and I prefer to stop here every build I do just for the part 1, because this is more of the meaty the meaty wiring, and then later on it gets to more of the technical wiring where it's just hard to figure out where stuff goes with the flight controller and such. Now that I can't even get this board off, jeez. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you want already. I have more build videos I've done with this. Once again, I'll leave a link down below to my Patreon account if you like what I do and you want to help support the channel to help future videos like this promote more content. I'll leave a link down below to a PID tuning video as well as the parts overview / unboxing of everything in here if you want to take a closer look at the components. And yeah, there'll be a link down below if you're interested in the kit to check it out from GearBest. Thanks again for sending it in to review, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.